No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited for this session. I've been moderating and I've been doing answering a lot of questions about how best to implement, when to start, what are some of the things that have changed now that we're an AI first. Well, we've always been an AI first platform, but now that we're really leaning into it. So we're excited to get started. As Brendan mentioned, I am Daniella, VP of Platform Enablement. People are always like, what does that mean? I'm here to tell you, I'm figuring it out every day. No. It means that I get the honor and the privilege of working with our partners as you all figure out ways to optimize and adopt Element451. My team stays with you throughout the onboarding process, so I oversee the onboarding team, and then I work closely with Matt's team to really figure out solutions for y'all as you lean into student success, as you lean into your applications and decisions. My team stays with you throughout that journey. And Matt, there aren't words. A cornerstone is such a great word to introduce Matt. He's seen and done it all, so if you all want to play the Stump the Matt Shiflett game today, he's always up for it. But Matt, please tell him about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Shiflett. I've been at Element for about, well, almost over 4 years now, maybe. I can't remember. Time goes by so fast. So prior to joining Element, I was right here kind of in your seat because I implemented Element at my prior institution before joining the Element team. So I was so excited to be able to become a part of the product. But before joining Element, I've been in higher education for 25 years as a director of admissions, director of financial aid, anything within the enrollment management area. So I have a lot of experience in that, but I really love working with the technology side of things, so that's why I'm here at Element.
Love this. Matt has led a few implementations as well. But our goal today is really to understand what makes an AI-first digital workforce platform unique. What did you guys get yourselves into? That's what we're hoping to answer. How to explore some of the best practices when it comes to planning your implementation, getting started on your implementation, identify those common pitfalls. You're going to hear some of the things that our customers have said to us and how to overcome those pitfalls, and then really thinking about creating and launching your ideal implementation roadmap. So at the end of the session, you're going to walk away with that practical roadmap, that blueprint for avoiding those pitfalls and starting your implementation. But let's start with what makes us different, and what do we mean when we say we're an AI-first platform, right? There's 4 pillars that we often talk about when we talk about AI-first, and what makes Element451 stand out. That first one is the proactive insights and automation. So a lot of you may be used to your traditional CRM when you're reacting to things that have already happened, right? So your CRM collects information on a student, that activity that that student is doing. But what Element does is it's already constantly scanning your data, it's spotting patterns, and it's surfacing those actions before you even know that there's something to look at. So a great example of this is, say you start noticing your application conversion numbers go down, right? Instead of waiting for somebody to identify or to see that those conversion numbers are down, Bolt Insights is going to tell you that already. And it's going to take that next step further, and it's going to create a task for your team. And it's going to say, hey, you guys need to take a look at these conversion numbers. It's going to create the campaign for you, and it's going to go ahead and send that email out for you. And that's what we mean when we say proactive versus reactive. The second pillar that we talk about is that we're built for engagement and not just for tracking. So again, you're used to those traditional CRMs where you've got the student who clicks somewhere, when they click, when they're clicking, what they're clicking, tracking how many opens that you have. What we do different is that we're going to harness that engagement first. So Bolt Discovery is actually a really great example of this. Students are going to ask questions, and Bolt Discovery is going to use AI to generate those and funnel those questions for that student based on the engagement that you're seeing. So you've got a student who's asking questions about your biology program, right? The next thing Bolt's going to do is it's going to lead them down step by step to get them to that biology RFI form, or it's going to generate an inquiry for your biology program without disrupting a web session or without you really even having to lift a finger. The third pillar we talk about is that continuous learning from your data. So I know you guys have seen the Bolt agents, and you've seen Artis and Ty and Petter talk about all of that data that's being collected and being learned. The Knowledge Hub is a great example of this. So the more data you feed in and the more customized the data that you put in there, the more Element learns about you and learns about your institution. So it's continuously learning. Every answer that it provides for a student, it's refining, it's iterating, and it's giving better answers back to students. My actual favorite example of this is the private knowledge base. I know I should be student first. Don't tell artists that I said it was the private knowledge base. But it's so helpful to look inside your CRM and ask about your admissions policy or ask about your travel policy and be able to have that at your fingertips and to be able to iterate and learn as your team asks those questions. And then that last pillar that we talk about is speeding up execution and personalization. So I like to say, personalization isn't sacrificed just because you're going faster, right? In fact, what we do at Element is we make it more personal and more efficient. So I've already used Bolt Discovery as an example, but this really is a good one. As you generate that lead from Bolt Discovery or from that inquiry flow in your agent, you can automate that process for following up. You can use the AI text block to send an email out to your student saying, hey, we noticed you're interested in this, you applied at this. I don't know if anybody was in Ty's session, but you can use a personalized token for their geography, and you can coordinate. I think the example that Ty used was great. It was, you're within driving distance of one of our open house events. That means you're 2.5 hours away. That means you can join us in the next day or two. All of that in the speed of time that it took, an admissions counselor or an outreach person, I don't know, a day before Matt, he was on campus, yeah. All of that sounds really great, right? And you're all like, yeah, that's why we're here, like at the Element conference, this is awesome. It doesn't come without its challenges. So Matt's gonna talk a little bit more about this and some of the lessons learned from the field, but there are some common challenges that we see over and over again. I do wanna say that an AI-first strategy only works when your foundation is ready. So when I talk about the challenges, let's just start there. The foundation needs to be solid. But these are the ones that we commonly see. A lack of clear internal ownership. So part of the problem with having too many cooks in the kitchen, I think we've all been there before, is that it's everyone's problem, so then it's nobody's problem, right? So one of the things we've seen there is people they buy the new platform, they're so excited, and then everybody's like, well, what do we do now? So make sure you define who's responsible for what and the timelines for that. The second challenge we see is trying to do too much too soon. So if anybody was in the CWI presentation in the last session, they talked about a phased implementation, starting small and bringing in other departments as they went. We have seen so many teams burn out chasing tiny little goals that they think are so important and in the grand scheme of things don't really mean a lot to success or what those quick wins are. So making sure that you've identified your goals and that you've got those assigned to folks. The third one, everybody's favorite, messy, outdated, irrelevant data. There's a session after this one that was originally titled Garbage In, Garbage Out. It is a saying at Element. You put garbage in, you're gonna get garbage out. Clean up your data, start small. We actually had a team who started implementation saying, we're just gonna start with fall 2025. Like, let's just pilot fall 2025. Let's talk to those prospects. Let's see how it goes. Let's not gum up our system with our historical data yet. And they saw a lot of success that way. So making sure your data and your processes are cleaned up. And then the last one, everyone's favorite. I've been in higher ed so long that I know that change resistance from staff. And I apologize to my IT colleagues in here, but I feel like IT is the worst perpetrators of this one when it comes to resistance. So no, everybody's like, oh no, it's not me, it's not us, it's not. Who is it on your campus? Everybody, exactly. Yeah, okay, I'll say this. It's faculty too, isn't it? Yes, there we go. We can all agree on faculty. Oh, that's hilarious. But making sure that you're communicating to folks, that they understand what they bought, why they bought it, and making them feel like they're a part of the team really goes a long way. All right, so let's talk about why you want to do all of this. You've got those challenges, you've got things that you're going to overcome. It's so easy to think that go live is the finish line. My friend Scott will tell you he's got plans after his go live. It's not the end, right? And if you're investing in a platform, success isn't just about being live. It's about realizing your ROI. In fact, I asked Scott if you would give a testimonial, and he said, I have no numbers yet. I'm not live, and I don't want to share our success without having those numbers. So making sure that you know what your ROI is. So a few reasons why you want to launch AI first on an AI first platform. Faster time to value. Understanding what your quick wins are is going to be really, really important because you get to show off. I mean, that's all we're doing here, right? We're all here presenting about all the wins that we have. So one example that I always like to share because Bolt is just so powerful. We had a partner who launched a single inquiry campaign in their first 2 weeks of implementation using the Bolt tools. So they had Bolt write the campaign, they had it build the workflow, and then they were able to send it out within their first 2 weeks. And within those first 2 weeks, they saw 3 times the amount of leads that they had, and as a combination, discovery, agents, forms, but before their full site was even configured. So they were able to start generating leads before they were live in that traditional sense. The next return on investment we see a lot of, higher user adoption across departments. I know higher ed likes to have their kumbaya moments, even though we all have those silos that we have been in. But if you roll everything out at once, people get overwhelmed and they get lost. So when we see teams communicate the why behind the platform and how it makes their jobs easier, that's when we see success. So we saw a student success team start using conversations, and Bolt Jobs are a few of our beta friends. I don't know if our beta testers are in here, but they were nudging students to request their student services. So they were saying, hey, do you need to request a laptop? Do you need access to the tutoring center? And they were using Jobs to do that because it was simple, because it was helpful, because it was immediate. They saw adoption skyrocket across their platform. Another reason we see a lot here, cleaner, more actionable data. So when you start with that focus campaign or when you start with processes, you get structured, you get relevant data, and it all starts flowing through that system, and that AI Bolt feature picks up and starts learning from all of that. So instead of uploading all of your messy data from 1942, just start with that fall inquiry list, right? And then in phase 2, we can come back. Or if that's your goal to say, hey, we want to dedupe, or we want to make sure that we're talking to students, who have already been in our system, start with them and pause on fall 2025, right? But really think about what your trade-off is here when you're thinking about the return that you're going to get. And then the last one is improved cross-campus communication and collaboration. So a strong launch campaign that has ownership, assignments, responsibilities. When everybody feels like they're a part of it, then you get ownership and you get those wins and you get that success, and you're more likely to be able to bring them in on a project down the road, right? Because you're going to need their help with something else. We all know it. So one campus, the makeup we usually see for implementation teams, marketing, admissions, and IT, and they all got together to launch a landing page. And it may be like, oh, okay, a landing page, that's table stakes for most of us, but it was a big deal for them. They added an agent to the landing page, they added discovery to the landing page, and it may have seemed small, but it really opened the door for them to have like a shared ownership in a project and be able to see the value. So 3 pillars of a successful launch here to summarize the first section of our presentation. Buy-in. Align those stakeholders and get the right stakeholders in the room. And then once they're in the room, define your goals and define your quick wins. Make sure you are planning. You've got a project plan. We see a lot more project managers on our implementation team who really keep this engine running and who bring in the right folks. Lean on your project managers. Assign your internal champions. I forget which session it was, but mapping out your internal processes. So I know my friends from Durham Tech are in the room. CWI and Durham Tech also hired some outside consultants, but didn't take the time to get them up to speed on the internal processes of their campus. And it turned out there was some friction there, right? So making sure that you have your internal processes mapped and that you're communicating them to the people who matter is going to help make you successful. And then making sure you're leaning into internal training. We have a partner who creates an Element scavenger hunt for all new employees who are coming on. You have to find this in a student record. You have to send this campaign out, and they made that training piece fun for their folks. But making sure that you've got your power users trained, your general end users trained, and that you've got that training plan documented is going to set you up for success. I know you're all tired of hearing from me and some hypotheticals, so Matt's going to talk to you about what he has heard from different institutions.
Oh, yes, definitely. And Daniella mentioned, she said that I have done implementations. That's when I started out at Element, so I've worked with all kinds of different teams across all those implementations. But one of the things that I noticed throughout those years of working with schools and onboarding was some of the teams would start the weekly onboarding meetings and they were like, what are we here for? And I'm like, well, we're implementing Element451. We don't know anything about it. We've never seen it before. We don't even know what it does. So when your leadership or whomever is taking that initiative to partner up with Element451, it's important that that information is shared down through, the staff who are going to be working with it, or even the onboarding team, because if the onboarding team doesn't understand what they're there for, then the onboarding is not going to be off to a successful start. Team composition and roles is very important. I've been on implementations where we've had teams of 2, teams of 1. I've been on implementations where we've had teams of 30. And to be honest with you, the teams of 30 are awful because nobody knows what the hell they're doing at that point. So from when you're thinking about composing that team, think about who is going to be that captain or co-captain, because they're the driving force behind getting this project up and running. And if the captain's not on board, or if the captain does not have time to work the project and do all this, the core setups and stuff, then it's off to a bad start already. The roles on that team also. So as the team is being formed, not only is the captain very important, it's also important for the other stakeholders that are going to be using the system or, eventually using the system, because not everyone who's going to be using this system needs to be on the onboarding team. So when you're composing that team, be sure that you have at least one person from the key areas. Information technology, very important. Marketing, perhaps. Some schools don't have a marketing department. I came from a school where I was admissions, marketing, financial aid, everything. So sometimes there are little teams of 1 like that are great because you get to make all the decisions and don't have to worry about the other people. But then also think about what those teams are going to be doing. Daniella mentioned a very important point about the implementation strategy. How are we going to get up and running? What do we want to do? What do we want to do first? What's our main priority? And we've seen a lot of schools just right off the bat, 2 weeks, campaigns going out. You don't have to wait for all that data to be ingested. If you're currently using like an information request form or your application is just bad, then as soon as you get that up and running, there's not necessarily a go live date. You can go live incrementally because Element is set up to where you can launch that request for information form, have a whole streamlined campaign series going out to the students to nurture those leads, get them to the next level of applying and whatever else, whatever the next steps for admission are as well. And the mindset and the communication. So again, mentioning what I said earlier, some of the teams when I've started working with them, they didn't even understand, some of them didn't even know what a CRM was. And a lot of people don't know what a CRM is. So when you're thinking about your processes that are in place right now, you got to get in that mindset. Be open. Be open to looking into ways to change your processes, not necessarily change, but improve those processes so that you are not only improving the student engagement experience and improving the student process overall, but also helping your staff improve those processes. Because there are so many things within Element451, even the things that just launched and were announced during this Engage Summit, that are going to help you spend your time wisely and personalize that recruitment experience so that all your time is being spent wisely across the board. Leadership and project management. Appoint one dedicated captain, as I mentioned, or two. Sometimes two is necessary.
But probably one.
But it's also important that I'm not going to just appoint Daniella the captain. Daniella, you're the captain.
I'd be a great captain.
You would be a great captain. But you also have to think about giving that person time. I know we all have jobs. Trust me, from 25 years of being in higher education directly, we have separate jobs. But for the success of an onboarding project or a success of a successful implementation, give that person time to work on that. Set aside time. Someone mentioned CWI just a little bit earlier. Every Friday is like Element451 morning. So they're training staff because they have a late start during that day or something for students. But think about the time that it's going to take to get that project up and running successfully. Team composition roles, assemble a focused onboarding team by selecting no more than, like I said, one. One person is typically good who is the subject matter expert of either ingesting the data, getting the data out of your other system, cleaning that data up, down to who's going to write our campaign messages. Well, anymore, you don't have to worry about it. If you don't have a marketing person, you can have Bolt do that for you. And it's a funny story. I should have mentioned this earlier on. That's one of the reasons why I went with Element451. And this is way back before all these nice little bells and whistles existed. I was like, you're telling me that I can run a whole search campaign. It'll set up the search campaign for me. I'm paying maybe $150,000 a year for somebody to do this for me, and I'm buying this product which does it for me already. So I was able to cancel a lot of contracts that I had out there for search processes because I could buy my names directly, import them into the system, and do my own search campaigns, which were usually a lot better than what those vendors were doing. So when you're composing that team, think about those key roles that are going to be important to the success of the project. Danielle mentioned starting with a phased approach, and I cannot stress how important this is. Some teams will start onboarding and they'll think, we have got to get all this done at one time. Or, maybe they want to get data in first and they're hell-bent on not doing anything else until they get their data ingested. Think about that phased approach where if your goal is, I need to start nurturing these leads to generate applications. If my applications are down, I need to start there first. Then move into perhaps application development, decisioning, then move into some of the other areas. So it's very important that you kind of have that phased approach, because if you try to do everything at one time, it's very difficult. And then that's where your onboarding team gets very disappointed because they may not feel that they're getting anything accomplished. But those small milestones of just launching that request for information form. Seeing that first campaign message go out is such a boost to that team when they can see all these results that are happening so quickly. This is one of my favorite ones. I had to stop for a second. Be open-minded. I don't know how many times I've been on onboarding meetings and they'll say, well, that's just not the way we do it. And we can't do it that way, and things like that. So think about the composition of that team again. Think about who your champions are going to be on that team, because if you get the cranky folks in there that's just like, we're just not going to do it that way, and I can't do it that way, then you're going to have very stressed out team members because they're going to feel like that they're not able to move forward with anything, because having a closed mind on looking at your processes is probably one of the worst things about trying to have a successful onboarding. The other thing is to don't get discouraged, and that's very important, because even if it's just a small failure, don't get discouraged about it, because if you continue that momentum to get things actively up and running, then that's going to help with your overall success of the onboarding project. So we think about a blueprint. Start with why. Why did we buy Element451? Why did we purchase this product and partner up with this team to, what are we wanting out of this? That's another thing sometimes that teams don't understand why they're even getting a CRM system. They don't understand what it does, they don't understand the capabilities, and they don't even understand why they're doing campaign messages sometimes. So start with why. Why are we purchasing this project? Is it to immediately improve application numbers? Is it to continue our student engagement efforts across the whole life cycle of the student? So start with that blueprint, and by using that blueprint, or start with the why, then you're going to be able to plot out, okay, we really want to get this form up and running. We want to have this event up and running because we have a fall open house. We don't have an event registration system. So it's those, start with the why and the importance of how you want that implementation to go overall. Lead with data sometimes. So I worked with a school. I won't mention any names, but I worked with a school that we went through all the onboarding sessions, and we got to the end of the onboarding sessions, and they're like, now what do? We don't have any data in there. I'm like, okay, well, where is your data? Well, we don't know how to get it out of our system, or so-and-so won't get it out of our system for us. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a step back here. Let's think about this. We can start using the system and get clean data right away with your applications and forms and so forth. So the data is very important, though, as a part of the overall process. As Daniella mentioned, garbage data in, garbage data in, garbage data out. It's very important to focus on, how clean that data is. Activate automation. Think about how you can automate these things. I've worked with so many onboarding teams, and they said, well, I just send out this email manually, manually whenever I'm ready to send it. And I'm like, well, how long does that take you to do that? Well, about 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, well, think about this. If you had a trigger to send that campaign message out immediately, that's going to save you a heck of a lot of time. So think about the automation and all the new features with automation we have. And then elevate the personalization. All this free time that you're going to have with your workflow automations and so forth, especially, not sending out individual emails to each student, then you're able to personalize that contact and outreach to them. So elevate that personalization, and that's going to help you really build up your population.
Yeah, so when you put it all together, this is what it looks like, right? This is your roadmap template. And I know people are going to kind of scoff at that 5-week timeline, but it's achievable. And it's definitely achievable with the automation and the AI-first foundation that we have in Element451. So we put this together for y'all. Those are your priority wins. That's the week's focus that you should be focusing on each week of your implementation. But when you're thinking about a roadmap, focus on the wins, not just the tasks, right? Focus on the end goal and how you're going to get there. Make sure your roadmap is actionable. Make sure it's prioritized. Make sure it's adaptive, that you can change it. And for the love of all, make sure it is communicated to those internal stakeholders because you want everybody on the same page. We've got a few pro tips to share with you, what to do, what not to do. The phased launches, the internal alignment. We sound like broken records at this point, Matt. We do. What not to do. Avoid waiting until the end to think about what you're going to automate. If we hear one more time, well, we'll just do that manually. Well, we'll just manually put in our applications for now. Or we'll just manually transfer that data. We'll import that data. Do not wait until the end to think about your automation, and do not skip your internal training session, especially around agents. So powerful what they could do. Set your culture and communicate it. But the final thought that we'll leave you with here is that AI is a strategy. It's not a step. It's not a check it off your list and move on, right? Your roadmap isn't just about using Element451. It's about integrating AI into your campuses and into your team and into your platform, right? It's about building smarter, faster, a human-first, and more human institution. And the ones that we see win, the partners that we see win, they're not just launching a CRM, they're really launching a new way to engage with students and a new way to work. And we are over time.
No, you're not actually.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
Not over time.
And Brendan's going to come in. Yeah.
So we're actually going to take about 5 minutes for questions.
Oh, awesome. But we'll take a round of applause first.
Yeah. Oh, please. Daniella and Matt. Yeah, absolutely well deserved. I see a hand over here. We'll go here first.
Hi, great presentation.
Oh,
thank you.
So
we are just about to start our kickoff. So yay! So excited. Just curious how you would recommend. We do not have a sandbox test environment. And I think that's okay. It seems, how would you encourage us to approach training? So I was in the last session with CWI, and they were talking about having the end users in training kind of playing around, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that, or should I feel comfortable doing that?
100% you should feel comfortable. I'll take this first, but Matt can tell you from the implementation side. During implementation, we show you how to test. You do not need a sandbox. We actually recommend you keep, some test accounts in there, but it's built so that you do not need a sandbox. It's foolproof, right? You can test workflows, you can set groups and permissions. You don't necessarily need a sandbox or a test environment. But Matt can tell you from implementing, whether I'm talking out of my.
No, you're spot on. One of the things to think about, even though, because a lot of schools will open up the full permit, the whole gamut of the instance right off the bat. I think it's important to think about what are the roles of these folks who are going to be training, using this system, and having some of those permissions set in advance, because when you're training folks in your live instance, which there's nothing wrong with that. I like it because then you don't have to go back and set everything up again out of the sandbox instance. But you don't want people in there wrecking stuff either. You don't want people building data sources that are like, oh, my favorite color is blue, and then over here my major is blue too, and something like that. So very important to think about, I think, who is going to be using the system and what they're going to be using it for, and establishing some of those parameters even before you start.
That was a better answer. I'll give him that one.
Any other questions? Yep, I see. Even with the blinding lights.
I know, right? It is hot. I was going to say, you guys can see the sweat on our.
First and foremost, go Birds.
Go Birds.
Piggybacking off that, setting your permissions, who should have access to what? Because I think that's pertinent to the previous question. how do you determine what the frontline users have permission to versus your super users? I don't feel like it's as clearly defined as it could be, so I'm really curious.
I think we have very granular permission settings to where you can actually go in and build custom permission groups based off of those granular settings of each module within Element. So for example, with data, I may be able to run an export, but I may not be able to import data because you don't want anybody importing the bad data. Down to, okay, I can let them do campaign messages, but they can only do their own campaign messages or their own team's campaign messages. So when you get into those permission settings and see the granular levels of what a user can do, they can either have edit or view-only access. You can do visibility groups. So like if we have a lot of institutions that have competitive internal departments, and they don't want the other departments to see their students that they're working with. So you can even get granular with visibility groups to say, okay, the nursing department can only see their nursing majors, business can only see theirs, but then you have your admissions team who can see all the people in the system. So you can get really granular with those permissions.
Yeah, and I would add, this is a great role for the captain. So if you're going to try to centralize that sort of CRM administration, we see the captain or the co-captains take this on a lot. We also see folks appoint somebody in marketing as the marketing captain, admissions as the admissions captain, and then they own the responsibility for setting those permission levels to the groups. I will also recommend, we've got a few customers and partners who have gone through this and tweak and iterate and maybe start restrictive and then be like, oh, okay, that's too restrictive. But centralizing it with a captain or an admin is a great place to start. Then you've got somebody who sort of is the keeper of the knowledge.
Thank you. Bonus answer.
You've been cut off.
SME response.
And bonus answer, remember there's no licensing costs in Element.
That's right.
So
Right.
you can rethink strategies on who you're bringing in and what you want them to do because you have the freedom to do so without having to pay more to add more and more users to the platform. So just bonus nugget from me. What other questions?
We've got one over here, Brendan.
Yeah. Between Daniella kicking me off the CS team and them cutting the mic off on me.
I'm used
really
to
just trying
moderating. I've been moderating all day. It comes naturally.
Thank you for the information.
Sure.
We are also just getting ready to kick off
Yeah.
Kirkwood Community College in Cedar
Oh,
Rapids.
yes.
Yeah, so we're very excited. Question, I like the idea of the phased approach. I like the idea of starting with an RFI form. On the opposite end of that, do you find that people maybe take it too slow? For example, our IT team is talking about launching our application in fall of 2026.
Oh, my.
I think we might be ready to go before that.
Yeah.
So what sort of recommendations do you have surrounding that? Is there a middle ground between too fast and too slow? Just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, there's so many different ways we could take this, Matt. I will say this, the great thing about your application in Element is that you own it completely, so you're not reliant on a developer or a third party to tweak it. What I tell folks during implementation is, if you're good with testing, you can go live. And we build in testing time, during implementation, so to make sure that you feel good about it. But implementation is built to launch as you learn, So we teach you how to build an RFI form, we teach you how to build an agent, we teach you how to set up those jobs so that you can launch them once you feel good about them. I don't know if I would wait. There's no reason to wait fall 2026.
Right, and I think also
Yeah.
one of the things that I also see happen is we have everything set up. We don't have to do anything
Yes.
else now. It's always a continuously evolving, not system. Well, it does. It evolves all the time, but you can't let it get stagnant.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to have those new things come up and new yeah.
That's a great point. Just because you launched your application in fall 2025 doesn't mean it's not going to be a different one in fall
Right.
2026. And you have the ability to change that and to iterate. Just because you launched a workflow for your inquiries doesn't mean you're not going to add another step, doesn't mean you're not going to add another segment. So that is a good point.
And CWI is a good example of that. They do
Yes.
that all the time. They're
Catch 'em
constantly
too.
iterating and changing and making adjustments. So
Yeah.
awesome. One more time, y'all, for Daniella and Matt, please.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.